Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris and Ben for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 124. Tonight, we are breaking down episode 7, Dreams and Madness of Ahsoka. We have the trial of Hera, and we have the emergence of Ahsoka to a new galaxy, as well as a standoff with Sabine and Ezra versus the Night Troopers and more. So much to dive into this week. Milton couldn't join us, but he will be with us for our big finale next week. But how's it going? I got Ben with me. How's it going, man?
Good, good. I mean, it was a nice weekend. I with getting a little chillier in the fall time of year, had a nice like pot roast and roasted vegetable like stew tonight for dinner, so that was really good. And then, I was just looking forward to talking about this episode. I mean, it's crazy we're this far into the series already. It's like, holy smokes, it feels like it was just yesterday we were starting the show and now it's like we're already, we're ending the show in 2 days. So, it's just crazy we're up to this point, and I think we had a good penultimate episode to get us to this point.
Oh, yeah, this episode, as we'll get into, is very much a lot of setting things up, table setting episode, if you will. A lot of great
Oh,
action, for sure. But yeah, we definitely have the chess pieces where they need to be.
oh yeah, this you can tell with the way Dave did this episode, and I mean just the way that Dave and everybody on that worked on this project did this episode. This was definitely your classic penultimate episode for a television show versus like how say like I mean we always point to Game of Thrones, but
Yep.
Game of Thrones always does kind of your big booming stuff in the penultimate versus the
Mm-hmm.
finale. So, they just took like just the normal TV model for
Yep.
any other show, just the penultimate. Like this is how Arrow did it. Like, I just finished up like the first season of Arrow a while back, and like that's how they do it. Like they build up. It's like okay, you get kind of like you're building up points for all your different characters leading into the big
Mm-hmm.
payoff. So like this show is no different. Like they took that exact same beat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So uh attending to some house business or whatever you want to say. Oh my gosh, I am totally just throwing it off. Sorry if you haven't realized we had tech issues and just happy recording in general tonight. Good old Discord strikes again. Uh Getting into some housekeeping. If you are listening to this episode on a podcast like Google Podcasts or Spotify or Apple. You can also watch us live around 7 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. We are chatting live. You can catch us and discuss things with us as we are talking in the chat. And if you are watching, of course, just search Outer Rim Transmission on any podcast streaming service. If you feel like, listening to us without, having YouTube open, you can go ahead. You can do things without actually having to keep the tab open and running your battery dry if you're just, driving or if you're at the gym or anything like that. Go ahead. But we would love for you guys to join us live. So, things that came out this week. We have a big one, the return of Quinlan Voss into Dark Horse Comics. This was a fun one. Of course, this is Hyperspace Stories, which is an all-age book. We have that one that was released. We also had Dr. Raff issue number 36. Now, I talked about both of these comics on the usual weekly review roundup on the channel. You can watch that now. And recently, in the last month or so, me and Matthew from Ion Canon, part of the Star Wars Underworld Network, have been breaking things down in a little bit more detail every Thursday around 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be breaking down whatever comics came out that week in particular. So there you go. You can watch my video that comes out that morning on Thursday, and then tune in on your lunch break for me and him to break it down in even more detail. So yeah, that's been going strong. We've been having a lot of fun over there.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a good way for like people to like stay caught up on like the comics and just to stay get informed about them each week versus like just having to like if they don't have time to read all of them or whatever, like it's good that like you guys are like going into much more detail than just say like a normal like 5 minute review or something.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. So getting into it without wasting any time, since I already wasted about 30 minutes if you're listening to this on a podcast, like yes, through the power of editing, we got it there. But basically this episode, you got a lot of things going on. You got a court scene. You got like this crazy scene in space, which is really fun. You got a showdown with stormtroopers. There's so much that happens in this one little 40 something minute episode. What'd you think? Initial impressions, Ben?
I mean, my initial impressions to this episode was I thought it was a really good penultimate episode. I think it did its job to like lead into the finale. Like it introduced different story points for, for all the characters really. For starting off with Ahsoka and our heroes. Like it introduced different story elements to them. Now they are having to deal with like Thrawn and the troops, and they have to deal with them basically trying to like get out of Peridia to get back to the normal galaxy. And then you have Thrawn, who is Thrawn and the witches. They're trying to escape they're trying to escape. So you have the heroes trying to stop them, Thrawn trying to escape, and then you also have the storyline between Balin and Shin introduced, where with Shin, basically getting dismissed by Balin to go work with the Empire. And then we have so we have the story thread of even Shin's arc, like what's going to happen with her in the next episode, because it's like, is she going to actually go to the bad guys, or is she going to go, and go with the good guys? Because when Ahsoka talked to her, she seemed hesitant at first. So, you have that. And then you also have Balin's storyline of what in the world is calling out to him. Like that is so intriguing in and of itself. And I really hope they address that in this finale, because it's interesting, because it's like it's either Balin's like ambitions, he doesn't want someone else to be there for like his glory moment, or maybe it's like he senses whatever it is like really dangerous, and he doesn't want something to happen to Shin. So like there's a lot of different angles we can go here, and story points that we can like jump on as we break down this episode through the show tonight. And it's like there's just so many different things to talk about.
Oh yeah, let's start in chronological order as we always do, but first I'll give my impressions. So I enjoyed this episode, but I did think it was very predictable. I was really
Oh yeah.
hoping, as we often compare, maybe it's a little bit unfair to compare like with the Game of Thrones or some of the other shows, like the penultimate episodes, a lot of times are like the big parts of the story. And then that last episode of the season is more or less like the resolution, it's a little quieter, stuff like that. So I mean, I was really thinking we would get a little bit more oomph out of this one. Everything it kind of went as foreseen. Definitely got a lot of really great character moments in there, really pivotal stuff. But I guess I was feeling a little bit just, maybe I had it built in my head a little bit too much, which, has happened to us many times before, as Milton will say, for me specifically, and me, Ben as well. But yeah, I really liked just the overall scope of this episode, and just the idea of juggling between these different character plot lines. You're jumping from the bad guys with Thrawn, you're jumping from the perspective of Ahsoka, you're jumping to the perspective of Ezra and Sabine, to Hera. So back with the first episodes of Mandalorian, we never did any of that, right? Mandalorian season one, you never got to see any other perspective. It was just always focused on Grogu and Mandalorian. And now you see where we are, and this is a proper TV series here, as far as like, this is kind of what you expect when you watch other things, like, I don't know, just Walking Dead or Better Call Saul or something, like just like several characters that you're following. So this is that Star Wars TV proper that we are in. And as you said, this is kind of the run of the mill for the kind of penultimate episode for the most part. But yeah, let's start with that court scene, because I don't think we've seen many court scenes in Star Wars at all, at least in canon, at least in TV series. So I was getting a kick out of this. The fact that somebody's saying objection in Star Wars, it's like, wait a second, what is going on here? So I don't know if that kind of thought dawned on you, Ben, about the whole idea of like this judicial system in the New Republic and what that could mean, and if that's even necessary, and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was a good scene overall. Like I guess I didn't really think about like the whole objection thing and like just that sort of stuff, like that being in Star Wars, because I felt like the scene worked, so it didn't like stand out to me like in a bad way. So I thought the scene was really good. It was great, like seeing, of course, Mon Mothma, the one dude from Resistance, and of course Hera, and like that whole that whole sequence I thought was done really well. And it finally, like, of course we as hardcore fans know all these shows are in the Mandoverse, but now like this is one of the big moments. Of course, we've seen Ahsoka in like Boba Fett or like things like that crossing over, but now like we even get more of the interconnectivity when you have Carson Tiva mention the
Yep.
events that happened in
Oh
Mandalorian.
yeah.
So like it's cool getting that kind of like payoff per se for like the Mandoverse stuff, because that was always one of the fun parts. For anyone who's listened to our podcast for any stretch of time, me and Milton always reference the Arrow show. But,
Mm-hmm.
that was always such a nice thing, like in Arrow when they would reference something happening with the Flash, and it's in like the other show. So like it's always a nice payoff for like people that had watched the Flash. So it's kind of like that. It's like a cool little payoff for us who've watched the Mandalorian. It's like, oh cool, Carson Teva mentioning that stuff. So it's like, it's a nice payoff, and it sets the table of when this show is taking place. So that's another, big time point as well. So, those are my initial impressions, I would say, of the court scene. I just thought it was done really well, and it felt, yeah, it just felt like a good Star Wars court scene. And it was great getting to see Mon Mothma like in
Oh
person.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. So I thought my Mothma would be just like a quick cameo in that first or that second, whatever, the third episode I think it was. So the idea now that we get to see a lot more of Genevieve O'Reilly. We've seen her in three different scenes. One as a hologram in Home One, one as a little tiny hologram in the ship there, the T-16, whatever it is, and then one here in actual physical being. So yeah, it's neat that Star Wars happened to be having those production timelines of Andor, which is filming in England, and then yeah, so I'm wondering. I guess they flew her to L.A., right? Because Ahsoka's filmed all in L.A. at the.
From what I know of, it's mostly filmed. What's the location? But yeah, it's filmed out there.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it wasn't as easy as, oh, you're already here today. Let's just get you on this other scene. Like she probably had to fly halfway around the world to get there. But hey, that's Star Wars for you. But no, that's great. It's cool. I put out a video saying, "Hey, Admiral Akbar is back. Isn't that great? Admiral
Yep.
Akbar. We get to see the guy getting some R&R. He's not really on an active duty cruiser." And that actually answered my question because I was like, why are we going to Home One several times and there's no appearance of Admiral Akbar? So I guess it's safe to assume at this point that Hera basically just owns the Home One now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, she's a general, and maybe like Akbar is like more of like a pseudo, uh, kind of like a retiree type character now
Yeah.
or something at this point. Like more like a kind of more like Tom Cruise in like Top Gun 2. It's something like that. Maybe he's more of just like, call me if you really 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 need me or something.
Yeah.
Like with the whole Thrawn thing. Like I think there's a chance we see more
Uh-huh.
of Akbar and all the Mandoverse stuff once Thrawn is like a big threat to the actual galaxy again.
Yeah, it's interesting because they didn't actually, he doesn't actually speak, right? So it makes you wonder. He didn't speak in The Last Jedi either, and it's because the voice actor passed away. So it makes you wonder if they ever do need him, if they'll just, go ahead and recast a voice actor or something. Because they've had other actors play him, I think, in like Lego specials and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like to me when it comes to that whole like topic of like recasting and everything else, like I think that's something like it shouldn't be an issue in Star Wars, but it always comes up as like it's like always a debate with the fans like, oh, should we recast? Should we do CGI with characters? Should we do AI voices? Should we do this or that or the other thing? But to me, like at this point now with Star Wars, it's like, hey, I mean, we're watching Genevieve O'Reilly play Mon Mothma and not complaining about it. So like it's like just let to me if we need to recast like voices or characters, like I would rather them do that than make some like Luke was great in all his appearances and stuff, but the only thing is I don't think that can hold up for a 2.5 hour movie, for example. So like I feel like you gotta recast when it comes to like voices or actors or things like that when it comes to these things. And I think that's what's gonna, it's gonna end up being a debate when it comes to even say like the Balin stuff long term. I think there's a chance we have that same discussion. And I've seen a lot of people, just a quick early name I've seen people throwing out there as a fan casting, which I would love, would be Gerard Butler. I think he would be perfect for that role.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like
Well,
I've seen so many people say that, and now that I've seen like people fan cast that, it's like, oh man, he would be really good as Balin, I think.
he was Leonidas in 300, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he's like a spitting image
Yeah.
of Ray
I think and,
Stevenson.
and and Gerard Butler's tall and like he's like 6'3", 6'4", like Ray Stevenson was.
Whoa.
But yeah, anyways, back to like the whole Akbar stuff. I think the Akbar appearance was great. And then of course, we can't talk past the scene without bringing up like the star that appeared in the scene. Um Gosh, I was not expecting 3PO to appear. And like the way they did 3PO, I think was genius because like for one, it's great like they gave 3PO kind of his like sassy attitude back.
Hmm.
And then it's like almost like not like he knows he's a celebrity droid almost, but like he even said like you know who I am, I'm C3PO, blah blah blah. Like he basically was like flexing his stardom like to get in there and talk and like make a case. So it was cool in that. And then of course Anthony Daniels playing the voice was excellent. And yeah, like just the way they did. What do you think, Chris, about the way they did the scene? I think they did a good job of dancing around the Leia stuff. I think they answered it good enough, like giving an explanation. I'm glad they gave us an explanation as to why Leia wasn't there versus just leaving it totally untouched. So it was good they did it in the way they did.
Yeah, maybe I missed something. So what was the reason they gave for her not being there?
He said that she was like a military console mission or something. It was something with like
Oh,
because she's over like the military, something to do with like the military like she's
yeah.
overseeing like parts of the military is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Like so
Okay.
she was doing something with that. So that's why she sent 3PO there to represent him. And also another thing that came out of this entire sequence with um 3PO and coming to Hera's defense and everything that I picked up on as well is Hera's like talking with Leia. Like, like Mon Mothma literally asked Hera directly, like, what are you and Leia up to?
Yeah.
So that means Hera's been working with Leia at, up to this point potentially.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so it's like, are we gonna I don't know. I feel like eventually they have to show us Han, Luke, and Leia in. I mean, it won't be in this season of this show, but I'm guessing it'll probably be Dave's movie. But with all this talk, like with all these galactic events going on, we're gonna have to get the most important figures in Star Wars at some point.
Yeah, so it goes all the way back to Leia's relationship with Hera back in Leia was 16 on that Mercy mission to whatever
Yep.
planet that was. That's when we first seen those Old Republic cruisers come back in a cannon, which was really neat, and they were impounded, and they were trying to get those for the early rebellion. That was a really cool episode. I really do enjoy that one. So yeah, they've got a shared history, and they both have like they are both behaving a similar way. They both are very much mavericks, and they kind of go against the grain to get done what needs to get done, whether or not people actually see enough to know what is happening out there. So it makes perfect sense that Hera is like the same type as like remember like 20 years later, Leia's gonna have to go against the government in the Bloodline novel to create the resistance. Same thing's happening here with Hera. She's creating her own small resistance with the Spectre. I think it was they called it Spectre Squad, right? When it was
Yeah, I
the
believe
X-Wings
so.
going out. Yeah, so it was great. It was like that's a callback to Rebels. It's awesome. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. But yeah, it's like typically when Star Wars like starts doing these name drops, unless it's Quinlan Voss, they usually show up eventually. So, and here's the
Yeah.
thing, it's like you're kind of skirting around this or touching this a little bit. The idea of like what warrants the use of like a CG character versus the live action character, right? If it's going to be like a 2 minute scene, just CGI the thing and get it
Yeah.
over with. If it's going to be a 2 hour worth, yeah, you might want to recast because it's going to just get people rubbed the wrong way. But then if it's only a 2 minute scene, is that scene even really warranted to begin with to have that character there? Can you have somebody like a C3PO there to kind of relay the information and you still get the presence of Leia felt? And I think that's
Yeah.
a good decision in this particular instance because I could have seen they could have easily, or not easily, but they could have also just put a CG Leia in there, talked a little bit, and I could already see a lot of the criticism like, oh, they could totally wasted her on just like a simple exposition thing. Like that's not really worth it. But if it's a huge moment, then okay, what are they gonna do? So I did like the choice they did here.
Oh yeah, I like the choice of just kind of playing the cards close to their vest. And like you said, the payoff usually happens. I mean, look, it took us like a year and a half or longer, but we eventually saw Boba Fett after seeing his shoes in episode 4 or 5 of Mando season 1. So, like we get the payoffs eventually. It's just a matter of time when. And like, the fact that they accomplished Luke is big. I think eventually we'll get our 3 characters. I do see this is where I kind of like get muddied on this stuff. Is like I would prefer the recast just because it would offer a lot of storytelling opportunities because then, if you recast young actors right now, you can tell
Hmm.
Han, Luke, and Leia stories forever then, or another 25 years if you want to, really. But like, so you have that's my thing with it, and it's like you already have Harrison, or you already have Han Solo, you already have Alden, and Alden's the perfect age to play Han Solo post Jedi. So it's just a matter of like maybe even grabbing the guy who plays the body of Luke and Mando, like because the guy looks similar to Mark Hamill to begin with without the CGI. So, if he can just act, if you can give him, I don't know, give him some acting lessons or something just to like do some solid Jedi acting and then, grab us a Leia actress, we're off and running. I think if you don't do that, it can limit your storytelling opportunities because this is the issue that Dave has in hand. And I'm sure, Dave hasn't like failed us yet. So I have faith in him on this. But if you're like logistically, if you're introducing Thrawn coming back to our galaxy, like because I mean I'm guessing Thrawn's not going to get killed in the next episode. I would be very surprised. But if you're introducing Thrawn getting back to our galaxy, like he's a scale, like he's a threat as high of
Hmm.
a he's the
Yeah.
highest scale of threat that you could have next to the Emperor or Vader being back. So you have to logistically include Han, Luke, and Leia, because what are you going to do? Say they're off on vacation when Thrawn's invading the galaxy? So it's
Hmm.
just like I
Yep.
don't know. Dave's in a really tough spot, and I'm sure he'll figure out a creative way to do this. But I think it's inevitable. I think we're going to see all 3 of them, but it could just end up being, say, in the movie,
Hmm.
if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think that's where they have the biggest budget to do anything, right? So that's going to help with whether it be getting those big names to be playing those characters, winning that money, or the development of the research to improve the CGI or the deepfake. Yeah, all
Oh yeah.
right. I did not expect to spend that long on a court scene, but there you go. It's I think it's kind of fun to just talk about the real life kind of nuances that Star Wars brings, even if it is over 40 years later. We're getting our kind of first court scene. I mean, also you count the Senate scene, but this is more of like the
Actual
court
court.
scene you would actually see in like flipping through the cable channels on your TV,
I
right?
mean, she was going to get what not reprimanded. What's it called when you
Court-martialed.
court-martialed? Yeah, she was going to get court-martialed. Yeah, that's like literally a legal thing. Like so, it was legit. We could have seen her like going off to jail or something in this episode.
Yeah. So, what'd you think about Thrawn this episode? Let's open it up to that part of the episode because this felt a lot like Rebels, where we see moments in Rebels where Thrawn is like, yeah, it's unfortunate that happened, but my overall plan will combat the end game here. So there was a little bit of that going on, like, but I overall think that we're gonna see the plan to his fruition here. Well, we kind of already did, right? Like he's specifically using Sabine and Ezra's bait for him to just finish his plans that we still don't know exactly what the plans are. But I did get that Thrawn feeling. I did get that Thrawn like representation that works in this one. What about you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like this definitely feels like the Thrawn that we've kind of been like wanting and expecting to get. Like, just the cunning, smart Thrawn. Like it's like, oh, so going back to the episode prior, like, he let Sabine go. People, so many people talked. I saw a lot of chatter online, not really negative, but like almost like questioning like why would Thrawn just go and let Sabine leave? Like, that makes no sense, blah, 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 blah. And now it's paying off because he was using her as bait to get Ahsoka away from his operation. So I like what they did there with him. Lars, of course, is just killing it as Thrawn. Like I don't know. I'm listening to the first duology book of the original Thrawn books, and like it's just crazy. Like listening to these books, you know, Legends, canon, whatever. It's just I would have never in a million years imagined us getting a live action Thrawn. So it's just to me, it's just incredible every time we see him on screen. And then like my thing with him is though, I feel like in this episode, just the way Thrawn is with like okay, so he's like planning and cunning and everything. But I don't know about you, Chris, but it feels like when the witches were with him and stuff, when he was talking about his plans and whatnot, like it seemed like they weren't like Morganelle's with it. It just seemed like they were just like, yeah, like just kind of like going with it versus like actually buying into the plan. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's really interesting because I think there's more to the Night Sisters than what meets the eye with Thrawn. Because of that reason, like maybe they're eventually gonna like question him long term or something. But yeah, I really like what they're setting up there with his character, and then just the Night Sisters as like kind of ancillary characters around him as well.
Yeah, the Night Sisters. I'm still waiting for that green magic. I It was interesting that they could just use their force magic to make a graph or an image and be like, she is right there. That was interesting. But oh man, I loved how Filoni put in that kind of Empire Strikes Back callback to Luke and Leia connecting through the Force in a moment of peril, in a moment of desperation and need, and destiny, and having, even though Sabine, we know she's not the strongest Jedi Padawan, she still connects to the Force. It's one of the biggest Force things we've seen her do yet. She can't Force push or anything, but she can inherently tap into the Force with the connection between her and her master. So I really liked that, and I didn't see that one coming. Talk about a moment where I was like, oh, now that is a nice surprising moment for me.
Oh yeah, that was a big surprise for me, just because it was like all right, like we're actually fan. It's just like I feel like that's almost Dave's moment of like, hey guys, get ready, she's gonna have the Force, so like prepare, because she at this point she's definitely has it or is going to show she has it, unless then again, unless it's gonna end up being kind of like a Leia thing, where it's just like Leia taps
Yep.
into it and isn't really just like lightsaber swinging in Return of the Jedi or something like maybe it's just more like Leia where she can like sense stuff like that versus actually performing Force stunts and Force like acrobatics and things.
Yeah, there's all sorts of, Jedi with different strengths and weaknesses, and there are a lot of Jedi out there that are not particularly ones that want to be craving combat, but they can, you know, help kind of manipulate a battle by using things like battle meditation, just slipping into a trance and like providing support for others. So what's to say she's not kind of that kind of Jedi? She could tap into something that she's not used to yet, but she is one damn good fighter with blasters. So it's neat seeing a Jedi or a Jedi pupil that is so reliant on blaster pistols. It's kind of, and a Mandalorian to at boot too. That's really neat.
Oh yeah, and it makes you wonder as well, like long term, does Dave have it planned like eventually, like long term, maybe in like a Mandalorian season or a second season of this show, like are we gonna get to a scene where it's like we've said for so long. I mean, I've said it plenty of times. Like the Mandalorian title, it probably means Grogu instead of Din Djarin. But it makes me wonder if long term Sabine ends up being the first Mandalorian Jedi.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the chart it's going towards that trajectory. It's definitely going through that trajectory for sure. One moment that I really liked in this, and this brings up that lost dialogue or the missing dialogue from one of the trailers, is we get to see a hologram of Anakin training Ahsoka. And I think one of us was talking like, is that the last time we seen Anakin in episode 5? And well, technically it was not. And it's really great seeing him again in the Clone Wars garb. Looks so great. Doesn't look like he aged a day, man. They did a great job with makeup, and if they are using CGI, it's very smooth. I can't even tell. But and of course it is a hologram, so in that case it does hide a lot of things anyway. But what'd you think about that?
Oh yeah, I thought it was great. Like it was so nice seeing Hayden even just as a hologram, especially like more Clone Wars Hayden. Like that's just so cool that we're getting like Clone Wars Hayden popping into this series. And the fact that he was like teaching Ahsoka a lesson, that was really neat. And it just makes you wonder, um, they're with what they're doing with Anakin, like there's so many opportunities they have with him now since Hayden's back in the fold. Like, I mean, heck, you could do plenty of Hayden Christensen hologram appearances. Like, who's to say, like long term, for example, like say we get to the Filoni movie, and like whatever happens wraps up. Luke has his academy. What if it cuts to Luke and it's not even like a dialogue scene? What if like Luke is standing with a bunch of students in front of a Hayden Christensen, hologram, like, giving a
Oh,
lesson. Like think about that, like stuff like that. I think just little things like this hologram leaves plenty of creative opportunities for Dave like
wow.
that. Like, a hologram in Luke's academy, a hologram, whatever. It leaves us plenty of opportunities for appearances, and since Hayden's in the fold, it's great. And like, just the fact that this whole scene, it wasn't just like a hologram, he was like, still, like, the lesson was like being more taught to Ahsoka. Like, of course, in that time period, Anakin was trying to teach her about the Clone Wars, but now it's basically teaching her about, her upcoming fight versus Thrawn and the Night Sisters, and, indirectly teaching her about that stuff too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, can you imagine? I think somebody mentioned it was like that's number 19 of 20 or the last one of 20 or something like that. So there's plenty of other ideas. Again, like Luke, that could be a way he sees what his father looks like all the time. So, well, he's seen the Force ghost of him. So, of course, the Return of the Jedi. But obviously, the most time I want to spend on this, or it might not be obvious, it's just this whole moment between Ezra, between Sabine. First of all, that is something so far-fetched for Star Wars, but it also feels so right for Star Wars of just like the idea of them like on these like little like they're on like a migration trail or something with these creatures, and they're just having a good conversation between the two of them. It's like, Sabine just laying out the cards like, hey, the Empire got destroyed. Well, we're pretty sure the Emperor died. Like little funny stuff like that, where it just goes to show you like Ezra has been totally cut off from everything so far out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, just talking about like this stuff with Sabine and Ezra, this is something like I think we mentioned on last week's podcast. Last week I was saying like this is the most one of the most George Lucas Star Wars episodes we've gotten. Like this week was definitely a George Lucas episode of this show. Like just everything that took place, I
Yeah.
feel like this is something George Lucas would have done, like 100%. Um, and this whole stuff with like Ezra and Sabine, like you said, it was a good conversation with them. Like you said, they're on like pretty much like a migration trail, I guess. Um, and they're doing a really good job with, I feel like, with the like the chemistry between the two actors that play both those characters. I think they're doing a good job with their interactions. You can tell, especially like the Sabine actress has been good, but you can tell, like, of course Dave's there, helping and whatnot, but it just seems like Amon, I think his name's Amon, the guy that
Mm-hmm.
plays Ezra. You can tell. I feel like he had to have checked out some of Rebels because like just
Oh yeah.
Ezra's mannerisms and stuff. He has them like nailed. Like it's literally like to me, it's like a one-to-one translation from animation to live action with his character.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best examples. I'll throw it over to Bo-Katan as another, as
Yep.
probably the first real good. Saw Gerrera, completely different character.
Yeah.
But then you
Oh.
go to Bo-Katan and Ezra Bridger. Oh my gosh, and they're both brought in by Dave, right? Dave had a large hand, I'm sure, in directing Katie Sackhoff, same as he's doing, I'm sure, with Iman.
Yeah.
So yeah, just fantastic. But just the idea of his look of when the night troopers come, he's like, oh, I don't need a lightsaber anymore. I'm just that well attuned to the Force. I imagined like he is like like a battle monk or whatever. Like he's wearing like these like tunics and stuff, and he's just out there on the wayside of things and just using Force kung fu essentially is what he's doing.
Well, well, he dropped the Yoda line. You know, the Force is my ally, or the
Yep.
because like he basically dropped the Yoda line from Empire Strikes Back because Yoda says like the Force is your ally. You know, you don't need a weapon like when you're going into the cave and blah blah
Hmm.
blah. And like he literally basically dropped almost the identical line talking about himself not needing a saber anymore. And it was such a to me it was such a daring move for Dave to go with Force Kung Fu, you know, like that's daring to do something like that just because if fans don't receive it well, like then it doesn't work. Like you know, if it doesn't translate really well, it will not work. And you know, they did a really good job with it, I think. And I think, you know, again, that's like a bold move George Lucas would do. Like he would say, you know what, let's try it. Let's give him Force Kung Fu, you know, like the old movies, like the old samurai movies or the old Japanese movies. Like, you know, give us a Force Kung Fu Jedi. Like I could see George Lucas like saying that. So like, you know, it was really cool seeing you know, like you said, him fighting with just the Force and not a weapon. Like that was, you know, something we've really never seen, you know, be done like that, like say openly. Like of course we've seen Yoda do it here and there, like against Dooku or whatever, but then eventually he takes his lightsaber out. Like Ezra doesn't take a lightsaber out at all in this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm wondering if he fused some kind of Star Wars martial arts, whether he fused like Terras Kasi or from Knights of the Republic, Achani is a dueling form, I believe, for the unarmed
Mm-hmm.
dueling form. But like if you look closely, I like how the amount of detail they put into like the choreography because like he'll stop like from hitting like a trooper in the chest like by a couple inches and you can like see like the force shockwave from like his hand just like you know, expelling out of his hand and just like force pushing him. Like that's really fun there. I like that. But then when he gets the blaster, it's just like it reminds me of like a Call of Duty killing spree or something. Like
Yep.
once he gets the blaster, he's like dead, 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 just like kill shot after kill shot, kill streak 5 times.
Oh yeah. Like you said, it was cool seeing him, you know, hey, he still knows how to use a blaster, like, you know, he's still good with it and whatnot. So it just I just thought it was a really, really good sequence with him. Like and like you said, the little details of, you know, him just stopping his hand right before he touches him and like, you know, force pushing him, like that was neat. Um but yeah, like I really thought it was like a well executed scene. And you know, Sabine's reaction, of course, was good too. Like, because she was definitely surprised when he's like, "Oh no, just keep it. I don't need it." And you know, I thought it was really well played out between both of them.
Yeah, we have seen Force Kung Fu recently with Darth Vader, right? Versing
Yep.
third sister Reva, using the Force to just redirect her blade. And we actually see a moment when Ezra himself does a similar thing against Shin Hati. And I don't know about you, but I call it like this little flare of the lightsaber. It's a really cool effect. Like you actually see like a little bend of the blade by the use of the Force, right? Like
Yep.
a Force lightsaber is basically infused with the Force, right? Like a kyber crystal is a living entity of the Force. So it's interesting, like what would happen if you use the Force on something that is so steamed up in the Force? Well, that's what you happen. It's like polar opposites, pushing, repelling against each other like a battery or something. I thought that was a really neat effect.
Oh yeah, that was one of the effects that really stood out to me in this entire episode. I was like, man, like, we've never really seen anything like that before in Star Wars ever.
Nope.
So it was really cool, like just getting that concept put in there. And then I can't lie though. In that entire sequence with Ezra, I was like, man, you know, this being like the penultimate episode, here's me in like my Game of Thrones head.
Yep.
I'm like, dude, is Dave gonna just like do all this build up and tease all of us Rebel fans and basically be like, hey, Rebels fans, time to like get your character killed off here? So I was
Yeah.
like, dude, because she singes his hair and stuff when she's fighting him, and it's like, holy smokes, like. I was getting nervous he was going to get taken out or something in front of Sabine, and it be kind of like Sabine's punishment for all the stuff she's caused, or
Hmm.
So it was just like, oh man, I'm glad he survived, because I was getting a little
Ah,
anxious during that fight with Shin.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't think you're too safe too soon, Ben, because
Oh,
we
I
still
know.
got
Well,
one
well,
episode
see,
left.
that's this is my thing that makes me even more nervous now going into the next one. I mean, how many times? I think someone counted. He said he's ready to go home at least twice already or something. And it's like, man, when characters are talking about going home and
Yep.
stuff, that's when you get kind of nervous.
Yeah. And I keep saying this. You got to make a Thrawn a really good villain. And so far, he's been, talking like a villain, but he hasn't really acted like a villain yet. And I think to have him, the power, whether it be, I think either Sabine or Ezra are on the chopping block. And I think it would be even more tragic if Ezra died, right? Because like you go all the way, you sacrifice so much to the point where you end up letting Thrawn
You
get
sacrifice the
out.
galaxy.
You sacrifice. How much weight is on her shoulders? Like if that happens, if she doesn't, if they obviously he's gonna get out. That's gonna be such a great character story for Sabine. I think in a future season or whatever iteration she shows up in again is all this guilt, so much guilt. Does she just go into exile at that point? Because it's like, how do you even show your face around the New Republic or any civilized systems? Because if you see the wreckage of what's happening out there, you just can't stop thinking that it's all your fault,
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, man, if Hera was getting court-martialed for just going to another planet or whatever and whatnot, like just imagine what they'll do. I mean, Sabine could be
Oh,
like tried for like treason or something, maybe. I don't even know. Like like just because it's like like you said, they're setting up that perfect like angle for Sabine, like to like deal with all that guilt and trauma and whatever. Like, because here's the thing to think about: what if I don't know, where's the New Republic headquarters at this time? Is it on Coruscant still?
it looks like they keep showing Coruscant.
Okay.
Eventually it goes. Well, actually, right now it might be in Chandrilla. Eventually, we know it
Hmm.
goes to Hazian Prime. It's like every couple of years they switch to a different capital somewhere else.
Okay. Okay. Well. Let's, for all intents and purposes, say it's like Coruscant. Like, what would be a bigger like character moment for Sabine than like, what if Thrawn? Because like you said, we know Thrawn's getting back. Because what else? What else would this series be about then?
Mm-hmm.
But what if? I mean, what if they just blast back to our galaxy, and instead of just coming to like the Outer Rim, what if Thrawn just is like makes his presence felt? I don't know. They just like show up over Coruscant or
Oh my
something. Like
gosh,
like the Chimera, boom, I'm back, galaxy.
dude.
Like I mean, that's just me throwing an idea out there, but I could like you could see Thrawn doing that, like surprise the nation, basically.
Especially since considering that there isn't much of a Republic fleet anymore. If they were to do that, they're so arrogant right now, thinking that there's nothing out there. They don't have the defenses, and we don't know what the hell the Night Sisters have been cooking up. Maybe the Night
Yeah,
Sisters have a way of, we've seen in Fallen Order, how powerful Night Sisters can be. They can like make a ship go invisible. They can cloak an entire ship. They can teleport people anywhere around, as we see in
yeah,
Survivor. So you don't know what could happen, and that would be talk about a way that would surprise me as somebody who's already thinking about how this last episode is going to go. Of course, I'm a Star Wars fan. That's what we do, but that would definitely score some points in the book for me if Thrawn did that and he like sacrifices Ezra like on a hollow cam. Okay, I think that's too. I think that is
Yeah,
too much for Star Wars to be able to do
Chris, you're
that.
going too Game of
It's
Thrones on
too
us.
dark.
If this was Game of Star Wars, it would be that though.
Like, all right, your hero of the rebellion is now gone. What will you do? You're powerless.
Yeah.
Your army is now 95% gone, and I have an
See,
army of corpses behind me. I don't know.
that's the thing. I really think we're either going to get Thrawn doing a surprise attack or surprise thing like that potentially, or it's going to be like with how much they've been setting up Carson Teva. I didn't get a chance to mention it earlier, but during the court scene, but I mean we're on it now. But I think if it's not Thrawn doing a surprise, just a really surprise attack jump, which hey, if they take any inspiration from Heir to the Empire, that is kind of what Thrawn did, bounced around the galaxy doing like surprise type attacks. But if it's not that, then I really think there's a chance like that Chimera and Ion bounce back into our galaxy, and maybe Carson Teva is out on patrol or something, and calls back to the New Republic, and it's like red alert, like he's back or something,
Hmm.
because because I think with how arrogant, like you said, you made a really good point about that. With how arrogant the New Republic is right now, what better way to like crush their arrogance in this season than announce Thrawn is back at the very end of the finale? Like,
What happens if he
like
just goes on like a recorded message for the galaxy, right? Kind of like what Emperor did on an off-screen thing in Rise of Skywalker. He makes his presence known to the galaxy, and they're just like, "Well, crap." I could see that happening. Like
yeah,
Thrawn, I don't know what his angle is. I don't know. I mean, we've seen what Balin Skull said about him when him and Ahsoka fight right before she like got knocked down off the cliff. Like he's basically trying to wipe out the old vestiges of the Republic, burn it down,
yep.
and create something new.
Well,
Um,
before we get too sidetracked off the podcast speculating,
yeah.
I'll throw out one more speculation for the finale. Man, okay, let's say if all this plays out, we're going into way left field here on these speculations, but let's do it. We're here now. Um, what if we get back? We'll go off your idea, Chris. Thrawn's broadcasting his hologram to the galaxy, and like the final shot, you just see Thrawn's hologram talking, and the camera zooms out, boom, and it's Luke standing there, and then it cuts, like seeing it. Like, man,
Oh.
I don't know. But anyways, though, back to our episode. Um, yeah, I mean, all right. So
One more
where we're
thing,
at?
Ben. One more thing, Ben.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
That's the end credit scene.
Yep.
And like Book of Boba Fett, they say Luke Skywalker will return in Skywalker Academy or something like 2025. And it's like we never see this coming. Oh my gosh!
See,
And
that's
then, and
the type
then
of
here's the
surprise I
thing.
would
And
love.
then here's the thing. Not only that, it's an actual recasted actor that is playing him. And then we're just sitting there like, what? And then they announce the name like they did Book of Boba Fett right as the screen turns black. And then you're like, oh, they got somebody new. And then we're gonna spend like 2 years watching the scene and be like, is that gonna be our Luke? Is that gonna be our Luke? Is he gonna pass for Luke Skywalker instead of Mark Hamill? Like that's gonna be the biggest discussion for years until that show comes out. But yeah, I think we're getting a little far ahead. We're doing pie in the sky. See, this is what happens when we don't have Milton on the podcast. When we don't have Milton on the podcast, we talk about these things as if they're gonna happen.
Yeah, Milton
We
reels
don't
us
have
back in. You
somebody.
and me will talk for 25 minutes.
We don't have anybody reeling us in at this
Yep.
moment in time. But
As Ken Knapsack says, we're not speculating responsibly. But but yeah, no. So we were at like the Sabine and Ezra and Shin stuff. Yeah, I thought that was done really well. I thought also I do like the Star Wars comedy ish that was put in the whole sequence. Like
yes,
that felt George Lucas to me. Like
yes.
the noti creatures like popping into he's like, no, get inside, blah 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 blah. Like that whole thing back and forth that felt Star Wars to me.
Oh yeah, the whole comedy bits. I'm happy you brought that up, Ben, because I was actually gonna go into that if you didn't already. But yeah, the funny things like it kind of reminds me of the Ewoks a little bit. Like these guys are using just even Ezra says like or Sabine says like yeah they're not really meant for this fighting or whatever, but like they're slingshotting like little rocks off of armor. It's like what the heck is this gonna do? Just
Oh yeah.
fun moments like that. Um, just that slapsticky kind of comedy that you would see all throughout Star Wars. Like it can't be super serious all the time. You got to have those moments of levity, even in moments of crisis. So yeah, Dave Filoni definitely learned from the best, and we see that represented pretty well here in this sequence.
Oh yeah. I thought it was really well done. It was cool getting to see like creatures in battle in Star Wars again. Like that was neat. And yeah, I don't know. It was a really nice sequence. And like again, going back to how we talked about Thrawn's plan, like, we're watching this as spectators, like in awe, like, just having a good time with this. And in the background right now, Thrawn's like basically packing up the ship, getting ready to leave. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's great
Yep.
that like, we're getting to witness like his plan playing out like literally directly in front of our eyes.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I couldn't resist to just think about the battle, some of the battles in Lord of the Rings, like the battle in Lord of the Rings when you have like the wargs attacking in the ambush in the Two Towers or something like that. Like just those creatures that the bandits were riding on really evoked that kind of medieval kind of style of fighting in Star Wars. That and it also kind of had like the Rise of Skywalker kind of vibes with like, oh, they fly now. Yeah, they fly now. When they're on Pisana and there's like the jet troopers flying and C-3PO is saying and they're on the speeders. It had that vibe too, like a good old fashioned Star Wars chase scene with some funny dialogue thrown in the mix.
Oh yeah, it definitely did. Like it just, kind of checked your Star Wars chase. It checked your Star Wars tropes, really. It did its job. Like it checked the tropes. Like I like that they introduced, Dave introduces new concepts like the Force Kung Fu stuff, but then he goes back to the stuff that like works for him, where it's like, some of your Star Wars tropes that people will connect with.
Yeah, so another piece of this puzzle, you mentioned her off the top. We have a character that's new to Star Wars, and that is Shin Hati. And the big choice that Sabine and Ahsoka decide not to take her and not to kill her. It's funny, I was watching this with my mother, and she's like screaming at the TV, kill her," and she's like, "Why didn't they kill her? Why, she's just defenseless." And I was like, "That's not the Jedi way. That's not the Jedi way. They are not Sith."
Yep.
So that was yeah. They had an opportunity to do something. They let her go. Now it's interesting because this character has kind of been a little bit untamed. She's not had the usual training for a Jedi Padawan. I mean, simply put, I think somebody out there, or you might even mention this to Ben, Boken Jedi or something like that.
Yep.
They're
Yeah, Boken.
called.
I think it's spelled Boken.
Like they're just a Jedi that are not trained in the temple. They're, like Ezra, I guess could be technically one of those. But the idea that she's a little bit impulsive, she's kind of a little bit like Anakin. She's force choking Sabine and finally lets go when Balin tells her to, stop. And the idea that Balin, and we could, I guess, in a way, talk about Balin as well in this whole sequence of like beforehand, just straight up dismissing her, like your path is not going to go where mine is, and like it's kind of funny how they left things off though. Like they've been together, I'm assuming, for years, and the way he just like dismisses her, like without any kind of emotion, he's just like, "Yeah, we're not on the same path anymore. Basically, good luck." Hopefully things go well for you. And it's just
Yeah,
separate their way. I'm like, oh, I guess that's his goodbye, or at least as close as he gets to saying goodbye.
yeah. You see, like that's the weirdest part about this whole thing, because like leading up to this episode, clearly Balin's concerned about her and like all this stuff with Shin, and then he just like basically fires her and is like, "Hey, I'm done with you. You're good. Leave. Like, go find someone else to hang out with." And it's like, whoa, what in the world? So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see where Balin's path goes. Like Shin, I do think though, since we had Shin, like basically Ahsoka and Sabine, pretty much, it's pretty. I feel like it's pretty obvious. Like it just seems like Shin's gonna eventually turn good.
Yeah.
Um, but also here's something to lay out as well. So that shows you right there. You pointing out about not the Jedi That shows you Ahsoka's a Jedi at this point in this series. She's a Jedi. She's back
Hmm.
to being a Jedi. Because I think if this was Ahsoka from Rebels, like who was literally trying to kill Vader and fight Vader and all this stuff, like I think she would have just killed Shin probably, potentially. Like just because at that point she was just more in like the gray area of things. So I think we have a character moments. I think we have future character moments with Shin coming up. Like I feel like she'll be with the bad guys and then eventually come back to the good guys. But with Balin, it's interesting because it's like you go from Balin caring so much about Shin to basically like kicking her out of the club, basically. And then now, where's Balin going? Like something's calling to Balin, and it's like, what in the world is calling to him? It's like Dave could be going a million different directions with this whole thing, because it's like what could be calling to Balin on this planet? And it's like there's so many mysteries. Like he literally talked about how it's like fairy tales and all this other stuff like that were told at the Jedi Temple and all this stuff. So what in the world? Because this is my thing. Like even going back to say the Night Sister stuff in like the 4th or 5th episode, whatever. The Night Sisters, like Morgan Elsbeth basically telling Balin, like those weren't just stories; those are realities. Basically, like those things are real, and it's like so. Okay, do you get what I'm saying? Like, so Balin is hearing something call to him, and he thought these stories were fake, but the stories, if they're real, based on what Morgan Elsbeth said, if they're real, then what was in those stories that could potentially be calling to Balin? Like, what fairy tale creature or being or something could be calling to Balin that is at Peridia? Like, that's what I'm wondering is, like, what in the world is going on here with Balin's character?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff going around about some Abelarth or some, I don't even know where people are pulling this Legends creature out of the thin air or something, but people have ideas. It's the Zepho. Apparently there's like Zepho writing from Fallen Order. There's this ancient forced civilization that went extinct. Like, so that's one of the front runners right now. I don't know if they want to connect it to the game that closely, but
yeah, I was gonna say the front running theories out there. You have the Zepho stuff. You have the Abeloth stuff. The Abeloth stuff has to like it connects to the Mortis stuff, I believe is what it is. I don't know. I'm not like the biggest expert on Mortis gods or stuff like that, but it has to connect with like that. Like it's the Abeloth thing is like it's like I don't know, like a freaky force creature or something, I guess, or something basically. And then you got of course you have the easy one, of course it could be like Palpatine calling or something. But then there's also, maybe, I mean, I don't know if Dave's...
What if it's Snoke?
I mean, maybe... Well, see, because this is the thing, though. I don't think it's going to be Snoke because at this point, though, Rey would already have been born. Or close to it. So that means Palpatine's clone should have already been an adult by now. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like... So that's the only thing you got to think about, because we're like 7 years past Jedi or so, 6 years past Jedi, and Rey, unless Rey's only like 18 or something in Force Awakens, then it's approaching the time of when Palpatine's clone would be an adult. So because this is my thing. I was really mathing this out. I was being like what's his name, Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind when he's writing all these formulas and stuff. Because if you think about it though, Palpatine's clone, for him to have had Rey with Rey's mother, Palpatine's clone would have had to have been born around the time or a little bit after Revenge of the Sith. Like in that period. So this is the thing, like how, so I don't know if it could be Snoke because you have, you know what I mean? You have, I don't know, the times don't match up. So it's like you have the Snoke idea potentially, you have Abeloth stuff, you have the Zepho stuff, you have, I mean, I don't even know. I've seen, like I said before, I've seen people talk about Dave could be taking Lucas's original sequel script of like, hey, like what if, because the original, one of Lucas's original drafts, it's like, Luke was going out to the outer rim or the unknown regions to basically, pretty much the exact mission Balin wants to do, because Balin openly talks about wanting to like basically end the cycle of good and bad and all this stuff. Like that was literally Luke's intention. He wanted to go out and take out the Wills, so then it would end the cycle of the Sith and Jedi altogether. So it's just like, what if Dave adapted that idea to this show? Like, I don't know. It's just with Dave, we don't know, because the thing is, like I mentioned before, even about the comedic stuff in this show, Dave has enough like guts to go bold with his ideas. You know what I mean? He has the George Lucas courage of like, hey, I'm gonna go for it, and if the fans freak out, well, let's go with it.
Oh, what about what if he's finding where the Ysilamiri are? There's
Oh yeah,
creatures
I
that
mean maybe
negate
even
the
they go.
Force.
Yeah, I'll say the Islamari.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean maybe they go with that, because I mean that could potentially be a huge thing. Like there's so many options with Dave, um, with what Dave's doing with this show, and I am so fascinated. Like don't get me wrong, like you mentioned earlier, Chris, we basically know Thrawn's getting back to the galaxy. Like that's obviously going to happen, I'm sure. And then you have whatever happens with our good guys. But I think one of the most interesting story threads going into the finale is Balin's story. Like, what in the world? And they're probably going to torture us and tease us, and it's going to be like he's going to be the final scene, like walking up to something and like talking to it, but we won't see whatever he's talking to or something. Like, it's going to be some probably cliffhanger, I'm sure, with Balin. But man, that's like that's probably my most anticipated thing heading into the finale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly.
So we talked a lot about what's to come, but let's give our scores and final thoughts on episode 7, Dreams and Madness. Out of 10, I'll start things off. I will say I really enjoyed just the jumping around between the different perspectives of different characters in and out of the known galaxy there. Great action, great stuff we haven't seen before in Star Wars with this really cool Force Kung Fu, aside from Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I like as we put it, the humor, the George Lucas kind of humor of the slapsticky stuff of, what are they called? The Nati? Nati or Noti?
Noti, Noti, I think.
Okay, the
That's how it's
Noti
called.
having really great, like the creatures versus the well prepared soldiers and all that sort of thing. Getting to see another great lightsaber duel between Balin and Ahsoka using both her sabers this time around, and him having the shock of, oh my gosh, she's back to life again. Oh my gosh. We'd even talk about the cool trap that Thrawn laid in the beginning for the Purgle, and like these depth chargers that were all planted around the planet. Now we talked about Thrawn, about, oh, we haven't seen him do much. Well, actually, I'll be corrected. He did prepare based on the Night Sisters that her arrival would be imminent, and because of doing so, he definitely delayed her quite a bit, I would say.
Oh yeah, I mean, he definitely delayed her quite a bit with basically like all the obstacles to get there. And also, talking about Thrawn and Ahsoka here for a moment, because we hadn't really even got into this, but I love Thrawn's, like, Lars's reaction. I don't know if like Dave told him to like look like really surprised or something,
Oh
but
yeah.
Lars's reaction when he hears that Anakin's her master, his reaction is like, "Oh no, like here we go." Like I loved Lars's reaction to that bit of information.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, what I will say is this episode delivered on what it needed to do. Did it surprise me? Not as much as it could have, I guess. And it didn't really get me hooked emotionally as some of the other moments in the series so far. So I'm gonna give this one a solid 8 out of 10. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, for me, I think it did its job as like the penultimate episode. Like for me, it like it checked off your boxes like to lead into the finale. Gave us some action, gave us some story, gave us some intrigue. I mean, look, we're talking about like what's going to happen with Balin, what's going to happen with Shin, what's going to happen with these characters. So overall, I think it did its job really well. And I'm really looking forward to it. And it's nice we only have a couple days until the episode. So for me, I would say it's another 9 out of 10. Like it did its job, had its flaws. Like there were some bits and pieces that I was like, okay, like some of the pacing, but those are almost more nitpicks than anything. So for me, it's a 9.
There you go. We got a 9 and an 8 out of 10. Next week's the big week, everybody. Can you believe it? We're already here. as of recording, we got like 2 days left for us over here, recording on a Sunday night. So, yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, unfortunately, if you're downloading it, you'll have already seen the final episode. So, I know we talked a lot about speculation, but I guess it'll be a fun listen to you guys after the fact. Be like, oh, you guys were either totally spot on, or you guys have a really cool alternate reality of Star Wars going on in the multiverse somewhere, if that ever exists, the world between worlds. But yeah, you can follow Milton at Milton Weber 7, I think, on all of his handles, Twitter, Instagram.
Milton Weber 7 on Twitter, and then Milton 7 Weber on Instagram.
There we go. We gotta have that distinction. And Ben, you're at Real Ben Maynard still, right?
Yep, Real Ben Maynard on all social media platforms.
All right, and you can find me on the Star Wars Underworld Network YouTube channel every Thursday around 12:15 with my co-host Matthew Negebauer, talking about the latest in Star Wars comics. And of course, you're already on this channel, or if you aren't, you can look up youtube.com/Starrapter. That's my channel where you'll find the latest in comic book reviews and some other fun stuff from time to time besides watching our podcast live. We'll be live next Sunday talking about the finale. Join us around 7 p.m. Eastern, like Chris Forsyth did for us here on the chat this week. We would love for you guys to join us for this very monumentous episode, because guess what, guys? After next week, we can't even fathom or even predict when we'll be talking about Star Wars episodes again. The good thing is the writer's strike has ended. Luckily, I'm happy everybody seems to be, good with the resolution there, with the writer's point of view. So it's good they got what they wanted, it seems like, and now we're just waiting for the actors to get what they would like. So very much, pleasantly hoping for a good resolution. I think they're going to be talking tomorrow, actually, as of recording this on Monday, October 2nd. So by the time we might actually record this, we might have another monumentous celebration of, hey, we're getting people acting again on sets maybe next weekend. We'll see.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Hopefully it all gets resolved. And for anybody who's also still listening at this point, just a little tidbit to throw out there: if you weren't privileged to be able to go to Celebration this year, take a look around the internet this week. The full Acolyte trailer leaked, and it's looking really good. I'm really excited for that show.
Oh yeah, I was lucky enough to watch that trailer 2 or 3 times at Celebration, and man, oh man, it's great seeing all those Jedi again in one frame.
Oh, I loved it. It looked so good.
Yeah, looks so good. But there you go. For Milton, who couldn't be here tonight, for Ben, for aka Chris, or aka Chris, aka Starrapter, we're going to end things on a great note the same way I ended them this week. That's going to do it for us here on Outer Rim Transmission. This is episode 124. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you. End transmission. Good night, everybody.